Today is April 6th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today, out of the Big Book, we're going to be reading Personal Stories, Section 2, or Part 2, I should say. They Stopped in Time, which is the first story in Part 2, The Missing Link, pages 283 through 285. And now the 12 and 12, we're going to continue our journey through Step 11 by reading page 105 today. So with all that, my friends, hope you're doing well with this brand new set of 24 hours we've been given. Life is good over here. Once again, I'm having coffee out of my Lego cup. I can't complain a bit. So let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. All right, guys. So if you recall from yesterday's reading in The Missing Link, our friend here, he is just in high school, his last semester in high school when he's hit his rock bottom. It says here, it was everyday drinking then. Since I had already been accepted to college, I consciously decided to make the last semester one big party. But it was no fun at all. I was miserable. I graduated narrowly and took the job at a local garage. It was difficult to manage my drinking and the job since they were both full-time. But I concocted all kinds of lies to ensure that nothing would interfere with my drinking. So today we're going to build on this, reading pages 284 and 285. Top of page 284. After being repeatedly reprimanded at work for being late in the mornings, I made up a story to hide the fact that I was always hungover. I told my manager that I had cancer and needed to go to the doctor for treatment every morning. I would say whatever I needed to say to protect my drinking. More often, I was having these little moments of clarity, times that I knew for sure that I was an alcoholic. Times when I was looking at the bottom of my glass asking myself, why am I doing this? Something had to give. Something had to change. I was suicidal, evaluating every part of my life for what could be wrong. It culminated in one last night of drinking and staring at the bottom. It made me sick to think about it, and even sicker to continue drinking it away. I was forced to look at my drinking as the chief suspect. The next day I went to work, late as usual, and all day long I could not stop thinking about this very real problem. I could go no further. What was happening to me? Therapy hadn't fixed my life. All those sessions, I was still miserable. I might as well just kill myself, drink my way into oblivion. In one last desperate fight for a solution, I reviewed my life, searching for the missing link. Had I left out some crucial bit of information that would lead me to a breakthrough, making it possible for life just to become a little bit more bearable? No. There was nothing. Except, of course, my drinking. The next morning I went to see my therapist. I told him I decided to quit therapy because after 8 years, it wasn't working. But I decided to tell him how I had been searching through my life for that missing link, and I'd come up with only one thing that I never told him: that I drank. He began asking me questions. He asked about quantities, frequency, what I drank. Before he was even halfway through, I broke down and began sobbing. I cried, "Do you think I have a problem with drinking?" He replied, "I think that's quite obvious." I then asked, "Do you think I'm an alcoholic?" And he answered, "You're going to have to find that out for yourself." He pulled a list of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings out of his desk drawer. He had already highlighted the young people's meetings. He told me to go home and not drink at all for the rest of the day. He would call me at 9 p.m., and he wanted to hear that I hadn't taken a drink. It was rough, but I went home and locked myself into the room, sweating it out until he called. He asked if I had a drink. I told him I had not and asked what I should do next. He told me to do the same thing tomorrow, except tomorrow I should also go to the first meeting on the list that he had highlighted. The next day, I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was 18 years old. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for about 15 minutes before the meeting started, trying to work up the courage to go in and face myself. I remember finally working up the nerve to open the door and get out, only to close the door, dismissing the notion of going into the meeting as ridiculous. This dance of indecisiveness went on for about 50 minutes before I went in. Had I not gone in, I believe that I would not be alive today. Wow, some great stuff there. Can't wait to talk about it in just a minute. Alright, my friends, so if you recall from yesterday, we have been continuing our journey through Step 11, which is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And the first part of this chapter was all about the meditation aspect of it, and the second part's been about prayer and seeking God's will for our lives instead of our own. So we are going to finish off page 105 today. All this should be very encouraging news for those who recoil from prayer because they don't believe in it or because they feel themselves cut off from God's help and direction. All of us, without exception, pass through times when we can pray only with the greatest exertion of will. Occasionally, we go even further than this. We are seized with a rebellion so sickening that we simply won't pray. When these things happen, we should not think too ill of ourselves. We should simply resume prayer as soon as we can, doing what we know to be good for us. Perhaps one of the greatest rewards of meditation and prayer is the sense of belonging that comes to us. We no longer live in a completely hostile world. We are no longer lost and frightened and purposeless. The moment we catch even a glimpse of God's will, the moment we begin to see the truth, justice, and love as the real and eternal things in life, we are no longer deeply disturbed by all the seeming evidence to the contrary that surrounds us in purely human affairs. We know that God lovingly watches over us. We know that when we turn to Him, all will be well with us, here and hereafter. All right. Well, first of all, I didn't realize that this was the end of Step 11, so I apologize for that. But some great stuff to end it with. I love this. Perhaps one of the greatest rewards of meditation and prayer is the sense of belonging that comes to us. We no longer live in a completely hostile world. We're no longer lost and frightened and purposeless. The moment we catch even a glimpse of God's will, the moment we begin to see truth, justice, and love as the real and eternal things in life, we are no longer deeply disturbed by all the seeming evidence to the contrary that surrounds us in a purely human affairs. We know that God lovingly watches over us. And when I read that line, it makes me think again of that image of me as a child and my higher power, just sitting on that bench. Lovingly, He's watching over me. We know that when we turn to Him, all will be well with us, here and hereafter. Again, this is just me, and I can't speak for anybody else but me. And if I ever have, on this podcast, I deeply apologize, because that's not my intention at all. I can only talk about my experience, and my experience is, even when I don't feel like it, I try to pray. Even when I feel nothing after I pray, I try to pray again, and I keep doing it. Because I believe it's in the seeking for me that eventually I find Him. But it's not just when I get on my knees in the morning. It's all throughout the day I'm praying. In the hallways of my job, I'll thank God for my wife, or I'll thank God for my children. I'll thank God that I was able to interact with somebody and help somebody, or I'll ask God who I can help today. And then the evenings, which is honestly, I admit, probably the time I struggle the most with prayer. But last night, for instance, I went to my spot in the garage, and it's funny, the spot is the same spot I used to drink, in the garage and listen to music. I just get down on my knees and I pray. I go through my nightly inventory. And I thank God for everything He's given me. And I think, honestly, I just think it's in the seeking and then putting things into perspective. And sometimes even just whispering the words out loud, hearing them myself, I realize how blessed I am. But for me and my higher power, it's just a relationship that I'm continuing to cultivate. Because if I didn't talk to my wife in weeks, and then I just come up to her with my checklist of things I want her to do, I don't think we would have much of a relationship. I think my higher power just wants to hear from me. And I want to try my best to carry out His will for my life. And I don't always know what that is. I have to pray for clarity. But there are some things I can be certain about. I am certain He doesn't want me to drink today. I'm certain that His will for me today is to be honest. I'm certain that it's not to be self-seeking. It's not to be dishonest. It's not to be selfish. It's to be selfless. These are things that I am certain about, these ideals. And these are the things I can put into practice today. I don't think I've ever heard an audible voice saying, "Rob, you need to do this." I think I'd have a heart attack if I did. But, I can use my brain to figure out, okay, what are some good things I can do? Who can I help? How can I get out of the bondage of self? God, help me to do this by putting others first. Your will be done. And going back to the big book real fast, I think it is so encouraging that finally our friend here admits he gets honest with his therapist. He's about to quit therapy, right? He's been going for 8 years, doesn't feel any better. Poor guy is suicidal at times. But finally, he tells his therapist that one little thing, and I put little in air quotes here that you can't see, about alcohol. And this therapist, I love what he says. Our friend goes, "Do you think I'm an alcoholic?" And he says, "Only you can decide that." He gives him a list. And he says, "Call me this evening. And when you call, you better be sober." Our friend, he sweats it out. He does the best he can. He calls. He's clinging, white knuckling, but he's sober. And then the therapist says, "Okay, I want you to do that again tomorrow. But I also want you to go to a meeting tomorrow." Sure enough, our friend, he does the exact same thing that I about did. He's in the parking lot, sweating it out, scared to death, not knowing what to think of this potential meeting. Finally, he gets out of the car. After much time of debate, he gets out of the car and he goes to the meeting. And that last line's powerful. Had he not gone to that meeting that night, he's certain that he'd be dead. I was scared too. I never went to any of these fellowships before. I had my ideas, my prejudices of what I thought they were going to be, just a bunch of this elite country club of people, or these miserable people that are just standing around or sitting around gossiping, smoking, and just not drinking. That was the only thing that was different about them. And also I had some issues with trust. I was really afraid of what people thought of me. These are all things going through my head. What if this doesn't work? What if they're rude? What if, they're nasty? What if all these things? I was using any excuse, right, to talk myself out of it. But I remember promising my wife that I would try something different, because I couldn't stop on my own. So I walked through my first fellowship, my first meeting, and to the biggest surprise of my life, the first thing I see is a smile. I'll never forget the lady who was chairing the meeting. She's no longer with us. But she was so kind. That's the first thing I saw, was a smile. And then when I was a newcomer and I told them that, it was my first meeting on planet Earth, we had a first step meeting People started talking about their struggles, their experience, their strength, and their hope. And from the very first meeting, I realized I wasn't the only one. I heard the similarities instantly. And to be honest with you, it freaked me out a little bit, but in a good way. And it was just strong enough of a sensation that I wanted to come back the next day. It's incredible, absolutely incredible, the way the God of my understanding works. Thank you so much for joining me in this lifeboat of recovery. Remember, I do not speak on behalf of AA or NA or Al-Anon or any other organization or fellowship. I am just a guy in recovery who loves these 2 books, and I'm grateful you're here with me. And please know that if you did not drink today, if you are sober right now, you're a miracle. And the people who love you are very proud of you. So we've been given another set of 24 hours. I hope that you enjoy them to the best of your ability. And if we're given another set of 24 hours, I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.